All right, well, let's bring in another of the Five Eyes. This is the US. Well, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has declared that the US stands with Australia following our ongoing trade tensions with China after pushing hard for an independent inquiry.
The Chinese Communist Party chose to threaten Australia with economic retribution for the simple act of asking for an independent inquiry into the origins of the virus. It's not right. We stand with Australia and the more than 120 nations now who have taken up the American call for an inquiry to the origins of the virus so we can understand what went wrong and save lives now and in the future.
James, some say we're aligning ourselves too closely with the US in this battle against China. I mean, but what's the alternative? We do what Dan Andrews does and we get into bed with China. I don't think that's an alternative.
Yeah, no, that's not an alternative at all. I think it's great what Mike Pompeo said. It really underlines the fact that Scott Morrison did the absolutely right thing in going out and leading the global international charge. And I think it's important not just for our standing on a foreign affairs level, but I think it's also important for Scott Morrison domestically, because this is also a real rebuke to all the people in labor who have been saying, oh, no, we don't want to upset the Chinese. We don't want to, go out too far on this. We don't want to get too in bed with the Americans because they'll leave us hanging out to dry. This is an important signal from the U.S. administration on this, and it's very welcome. And I think it just puts a lot of Scott Morrison's critics here in Australia as well back in their box, because the fact is China has just offended the entire world with its behavior over this coronavirus. They don't have any friends left. And so, for people here to be saying, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't, go too far or offend them for lack of being, of friends and allies of our own, I think just as a complete misreading of the global situation.
Corey, I've got to ask you your view on Victoria and this Belt and Road initiative. I made the big call a little moment ago, and I stand by it absolutely, that any idea that an Australian state can do a deal with another nation state, in this case China, and keep that deal secret, I think, and the whole time I've been here at Sky News, is the most worrying and the most significant issue that I've seen this country debate. And the idea that they're not answering questions, that they're not saying where the latest $25 billion they're borrowing is coming from, all of this happens, and I know, in the federal parliament. These sorts of treaties and agreements have all the scrutiny and sunlight that they demand. They go through the parliament. Not so in Victoria. I mean, how is this happening?
It's quite extraordinary. There are a number of troubling things that have happened in Victoria over the years as far as governance goes, but this is extraordinary. The fact that they're trying to shut down any sunlight and disinfectant on it. They want to preclude, I heard your earlier interview, they're reducing the requirement for Australian industry input and materials, expanding it for the Chinese. This is straight out of the Communist Party's playbook, and Dan Andrews is falling for it. And I hate to correct James, but China does have one friend left in the world. If we rule out Venezuela, it's Daniel Andrews in Victoria. And I think it is appalling. But it's right that the federal government, I think, needs to make some serious inquiries into it if the state parliament of Victoria won't hold the government to account there.
Yeah, look, it's worrying, and we're going to stay right across this issue and do more and more and more on it. James, I've got to ask you, this is a voting insider, but it's a campaign issue, and of course we're getting closer and closer to November, even though we've been distracted by this virus. But President Trump is threatening to withhold federal funding from Michigan and Nevada, claiming their decision to allow mail-in voting in the upcoming election will lead to voter fraud.
Yeah, that's right, and I think he's got a case for that. There has been more voter fraud reported than people are really aware of in the United States in previous elections. And we also know that elections do not spread the coronavirus. We know that there was a couple of by-elections in Wisconsin recently. We did not see any spike in virus cases from people going out and voting. We should be trying, and America should be trying, to get back to normality as much as possible with this, and they shouldn't let states do anything that's going to allow any doubt to be cast on the election result in 2020. Because if, we spent the last 4 years with people saying that this election wasn't legitimate on the left, we need to get to a point where the next election there's absolutely no question about, and one of the ways you do that is you have people show up and vote in person.
Corey Bernardi, super quick comment from you.
I agree with James. Donald Trump's on the money here. The Democrats have demonstrated over the last 4 years they will do anything, including cheat, lie, discredit politics overall in order to beat Donald Trump. And I think this is just another step in that direction. So full marks to him.
Corey Bernardi, James Morrow, thank you as always for your company tonight.